Thank you, Ceann Corla. And I'm pleased to be here speaking on the legislation and that it's been brought forward, as it's well known that there needs to be a step back and deep breaths taken in forming county development plans, particularly as the NPF, the National Planning Framework, takes no account of the COVID pandemic nor a post-COVID era. We see headlines in the Irish Times yesterday: house prices surged 13% as red-hot demands outstrip supply. People are moving to post-COVID themselves. They're buying houses that will allow them to work from home, houses that can accommodate family living and office facilities, houses that our current guidelines do not provide for. Current planning policy is driving this restriction in supply, and should proposals in the current draft plans be adopted, then this supply situation is going to deteriorate even further. The administration of planning policy and inconsistencies in their applications have seen judicial review spiral over the last number of years. This year alone, legal fees at An Bord Pleanála spiralled by 300% to 8.4 million. The inappropriate application of guidelines by the main organs of the state is the primary cause of the problem. Local authority officials regularly misrepresent and misinterpret guidelines, apply them incorrectly, and cause situations where certainty does not exist in the planning process. This creates a breathing ground for judicial review proceedings and ultimately circumstances where housing supply is strangled. Last week in this House, I called for continuous professional development for directors of services for planning and senior planners, as a result of what can only be described as a clear lack of understanding of planning law demonstrated by a director of planning on South East Radio concerning the Wexford County Development Plan. This morning, I received a call from the Chief Executive of Wexford County Council. Instead of acknowledging mistakes by the director, he defended the indefensible. Ceann Corla, I think it's time that CEOs of local authorities realised their obligations are to their county and not the Customs House. The blind application of central government policy without consideration of that policy in a local context is unacceptable. The refusal of local authorities to respond to correspondence to a TD is unacceptable, particularly where those correspondence relate to legislation that is relevant to their work. The executives in each county are the expert advisors to their members, yet they refuse to provide a comprehensive range of advices around planning issues to discuss. Ceann Corla, the strong arming of members that are blindly led by officials to approve plans that are incomprehensible must stop. The type of behaviour flies in the face of the spirit of this legislation. These issues need to be addressed immediately if further judicial reviews are to be avoided. Development plans informed by misinformation, misinterpretations and guidance from officials intended to mislead should be judicially reviewed, and those judicial reviews should succeed. For example, this morning alone, in my own county, the CEO fed me the following lines in relation to our development plan. He advised me that the circular of the Minister, dated the 21st of April, had no impact on the current draft development plan. He says this is only to be considered in the context of an individual planning application. The dogs in the street know that if you provide for minimum densities in the development plan, then an individual planning application cannot be at odds with that minimum. He advised that they would not have high densities in the development plan for the towns, yet the county development plan provides for such densities. He says he is bound by decision precedents of An Bord Pleanála, yet there is no legal authority for such an assertion. The board cannot impose a precedent on the will of county councillors in the formation of a development plan. None of the above points hold any muster to justify provisions for minimum densities in county development plans. Ceann Corla, it's our responsibility as elected representatives to call out this practice. The Wexford CEO advised me this morning that I had no function in contacting Wexford County Council about their development plan. I might remind him that I am the third elected TD in Wexford to represent the people of Wexford. I stand here to act in their best interests. I debate the legislation on a daily basis in this House that underpins the basis of the operation of his local authority and the formation of the development plans. The notion that TDs should not be entitled to provide oversight regarding the interpretation of legislation or ministerial guidelines when the local authority is patently wrong in their interpretation is bizarre. And further, the idea that county managers refuse to respond to correspondence to TDs on such matters is an absolute disgrace. Officials need to be held to account, and I will be revisiting this issue. Ceann Comhairle, we're spending billions rolling out broadband services at every corner in Ireland. What is the point if we're not going to allow building homes? It is incomprehensible. There are many inconsistencies in planning policy and the National Planning Framework. The 12-month extension will allow for some of them to be remedied. Much of what has happened in the past 18 months means that the National Planning Framework must be revisited, or we will continue to see mistakes being made with no meaningful housing supply in the market. On that basis, I believe my part in ensuring that this legislation is now before the House. It is indeed only providing a basis for the county councils to breathe after a difficult year of Zoom-only meetings, to apply for an extension and start the process again, or we will continue to be on the floor of this House on a daily basis for some time to come, and possibly years. But with regard to this bill, I will be tabling an amendment to allow more flexibility in relation to the extension of existing permissions, as what is currently proposed in the teeth of a housing crisis is too restrictive. We cannot let a situation arise where permissions will expire for the want of minor amendments to this proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.